Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100, every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
Coming up, the Sky News Daily with me, Niall Paterson. Today, Friedrich Merz will be Germany's next chancellor. Do his plans for a stronger Europe independent from the United States put him on a collision course with Donald Trump? Remember, if you enjoy what you hear and you don't want to miss out, do us a favour and follow us on your podcast app. Stay right where you are.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100, every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
The results are in and Germany has a new chancellor. Well, soon it will, once the Christian Democratic Union's Friedrich Merz has sorted out his coalition government. In an election with the highest turnout in 35 years, the Conservative CDU-CSU alliance won 28.6% of the vote. By way of contrast, Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats went from running the government to their worst ever result as politics across Europe continues to shift right. In fact, Scholz came in third behind the far-right AfD. For more on them, you can scroll back to an episode last week on The Daily. Today, though, we're going to look forward, as Friedrich Merz has made clear that in the face of Russian aggression, he wants a more united, a more strengthened Europe, and one that's independent from the United States. Adam Parsons is our Europe correspondent, and he's in Berlin. Adam, just let's start with a very simple question. Friedrich Merz, who is he?
So he is a career politician. He's been a member of the CDU, Christian Democratic Union, for half a century. He's just coming up to his 70th birthday. And he is the man who has been the man in waiting for so long. So this is the pinnacle of his career. He's a former MEP. He's been in and around this party. But for a long time, his domestic political ambitions were thwarted by the shadow of Angela Merkel, because he and Merkel didn't get on. She has even criticised him during this campaign. Politically, he is, probably more to the right of the CDU. And so finally, after this whole career of waiting, he is now the man who will get the top job.
Yeah, he's got to wait just a little bit longer, though, Adam, we should make clear. He's not Chancellor yet. He's still got to form a government, and it will be a coalition.
It will be a coalition, and it very likely will be a coalition with the Social Democrats. Now, the leader of that party, the SPD, is Olaf Scholz, and if that name rings a lot of bells, it's because he's the outgoing Chancellor, whose reign, I think, will be remembered as a sort of fairly insipid display of leadership. So a coalition will be formed. Doesn't have to be with the Social Democrats, but that is the classic coalition. It's called the Grand Coalition between these two parties. The reason they're an obvious fit is that one is a centre-right, one is centre-left. So they tend to have a lot of areas where even if they don't agree, then they can kind of mesh together. Now, you might imagine, Neil, that would be the sort of coalition that could be drawn up pretty quickly. In reality, it just doesn't happen like that. It was just suggested to me now by someone reasonably close that it could take till Easter to come up with a working coalition. And until that point, Olaf Scholz dead duck though he may be politically, will carry on as Germany's chancellor.
Well, I suppose, Adam, the one benefit of this period of reflection in terms of German politics is that it allows us all to look more closely at what Herr Merz has actually been saying in the run-up to and the aftermath of this election. I mean, what has the next chancellor been saying on the topic of Europe, its relationship with the United States and, of course, Donald Trump?
Well, that is the one that jumped out this morning. Basically, no sooner had he effectively won this election, he was saying that Germany and Europe has to develop a life independent of the United States. He complained about electoral interference coming from the US. Well, those are punchy bits of diplomacy. This is a guy who's got a history in fostering closer transatlantic ties between Germany and America. And here he is, within hours of this victory, saying that Germany and Europe has to effectively distance itself from America. Now, big diplomatic question would be, is he talking about America in the round, or is he talking about Donald Trump's America? And I think my guess would be he's talking about Trump's version of America. And that's incredibly significant when it comes to Germany, because A, this is the European Union's biggest economy in Europe, for that matter. It is developing that transatlantic trade deal that Trump talks about a lot. I think Merz will want to have a loud voice in those discussions. And remember, there are 35,000 American troops stationed on German soil. Those could become a bargaining chip as well, used by Trump with the potential threat of moving those troops or taking them out. This is suddenly very high-stakes stuff. This is the sort of conversations that might have been couched in much more diplomatic language and expressed behind the scenes. And now we have statesmen calling each other out in public within hours of getting a top job.
But isn't what Herr Merz calling for a stronger Europe, a more united Europe, a Europe that looks after itself? I mean, isn't that what Donald Trump's essentially asking us for?
Yes. Curiously, there probably is a sort of grey area of agreement, except, as ever, you wonder, what is it that Donald Trump says? What is it that he actually means? Now, I think one of the tricks that European leaders are beginning to take is that you have to actually take him at his word. If he's threatening to pull out of NATO, take that seriously. If there are people now who doubt, even if he stays in NATO, whether he would guarantee a US response as NATO's Article 5 actually demands, then it's a kind of obvious answer that the big nations of Europe will have to do more, will have to spend more on defence, will have to come together more. Emmanuel Macron, the French president, has for a while now flagged up the idea of a European army and has got pretty much nowhere because of resistance from various nations, including vehemently the Germans. I wonder whether that idea starts to become more palatable now. And certainly that question of European unity is something that will have to be more openly expressed. And I think Friedrich Merz, much more than Olaf Scholz, will want to be at the forefront of that conversation.
All of this, Adam, of course, relating to the ongoing conflict, the ongoing war in Ukraine. 3 years now of war in Ukraine. And on that topic, Friedrich Merz has also been pretty strong. Donald Trump calling President Zelensky a dictator. I mean, Friedrich Merz says Ukraine needs and must have a seat at the negotiating table.
Yeah, echoing comments that really have come from across Europe. I think there are two things that have really infuriated Europeans specifically. One is Donald Trump undermining President Zelensky. The second thing was J.D. Vance's speech in Europe, where he, in the eyes of many European diplomats, was condescending, patronising and inappropriately critical and abrasive of European culture and politics. And you put those two things in the round, what you're getting in Germany, in France, and across this continent are people saying, Europe is just doesn't need this. We don't need to be lectured by the Americans. And it's certainly, the Zelensky one is important, because that line that Ukraine has to be at the negotiating table and that leaders support Zelensky is being reiterated now. You've heard it from Keir Starmer, you've heard it from Macron, you've heard it from a whole series of leaders across Europe. Now you're hearing it from Friedrich Merz. And I think a line is being drawn in the sand. The talks that the US precipitated with Russia, there are some in this continent who will say, what a great thing to open peace talks to try and bring an end to this war. There are plenty who say it is utterly inappropriate to have peace talks that don't involve Ukraine. It is also inappropriate to undermine the work that Europe, in their minds, have done to ostracize the Russians. And I've got to say, Neil, there are a growing number of people that I speak to who are very anxious, not just on a diplomatic level, who think that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin are uncomfortably similar personalities and who worry that when push comes to shove, Trump may prefer to be friends with Putin than he is with other European leaders.
But what of Merz and Trump? I mean, is a relationship between those two entirely unthinkable? I mean, he does have, views such as he's not keen on unfettered migration. He wants to get rid of illegal migrants to Germany. I mean, that's exactly the sort of thing that Donald Trump loves.
Yeah, and look, we know that one of the arts of politics is to say one thing in public and one thing in private and to make friends with people that you don't particularly like. So is a relationship unthinkable? No, it's not. As many political leaders can't bear each other and have a completely workable relationship. And on migration, look, it's a really difficult one, that, for Merz, because he has on his right flank, the AfD, a very far-right party, which is a far-right party, and one of their absolute policy planks is about migration, controlling migration, and flagging up the prospect of remigration, potentially remigration of people who are German citizens. To many, that is unpalatable. But the bottom line is the AfD did incredibly well in this election. They got themselves up to 20%. But what Merz can't do is be seen to be too liberal. He's going to have to take a hard line on some things, and migration, absolutely, pounds of penny, will be one of them. So there will be common ground between him and Trump on that. But I wonder whether his policy on migration will be pragmatic and Trump's one feels more heartfelt.
But interesting to note then, Adam, that, Donald Trump did praise the winner in Germany. Didn't mention Friedrich Merz by name, nor indeed the CDU. But you've got Elon Musk leaving telephone messages for the head of the AfD instead.
Yeah, and remember yesterday, when he left a press conference, Donald Trump was asked about the German election and seemed completely unaware that it was happening, and then was asked what his opinion was, and he said, well, we've got enough problems of our own. Let's not pretend that Donald Trump was hugely engaged in this election. And of course, you can say, well, look, one is the president and one is an unelected advisor. But right now, as with so many things around the American administration, it's quite hard to know where the President Trump stops and advisor Elon Musk starts. So, yeah, it's in terms of the transatlantic relationship, it's not a great start when you think the president's right-hand man is so strongly allied to one of your greatest rivals.
Adam, we will be back to you in just a moment when we'll be discussing Europe's response to Merz's victory. And just a reminder that if you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe on your podcast app. That way you get the daily downloaded to your devices just as soon as it publishes. We'll be back in just a second.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
Our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons, is in Berlin. He's been there for the election win by Friedrich Merz of the CDU. Adam, take a step back. Just how is this victory being received in other European capitals?
Well, look, he's seen as a grown-up politician, for one thing. he is seen as somebody who has got a lot of miles on the clock, and to use another familiar expression, he is somebody you can do a deal with. So I think there will be many who look at this victory and are reasonably pleased. I think it isn't just about Friedrich Merz winning the chancellorship. If we end up with a grand coalition of these two centre parties, there will be many leaders across Europe who say that looks like the best result for maintaining stability at a volatile time. So that's my guess, is that in many of the capitals around Europe, they'll look at that coalition as being something safe, something that they can do deals with, something that will listen to feedback, and perhaps something that offers sort of real leadership.
People often say that France and Germany really are the backbone of Europe. Does a new chancellor mean a reset for German-French relations? And does it push the continent closer together, as Merz has stated that he wants?
I think those two things are probably slightly different, because the Franco-German axis, particularly since Brexit, has been extremely dominant in terms of European opinion-making. There are lots of nations who look at France and Germany, see these enormous economies that dwarf, if you're Cyprus or Malta or Estonia, you want these nations on your side. So you will discuss and debate and suggest, but ultimately it takes a brave leader of one of the smaller nations to go against them. Will that change the dynamic? Well, it will, insofar as you are going from a centre-left chancellor, probably more politically similar to, let's say, Emmanuel Macron, to someone from the centre-right. But Macron is a political chameleon. He is centre-left at some times, centre-right at others. He has almost got this shape-shifting ability to pick up policies from various areas. He will deal with whoever is in front of him.
We should talk a little bit about the United Kingdom. I mean, do we feature in Germany's thinking whatsoever? Do we feature in Merz's thinking? I imagine we must do, if he's talking about a unified Europe organising its own defence.
We feature more now than we did before Donald Trump came to power. There's no doubt about that. I think there's probably also an even greater desire to bring the UK back into the fold. If people in Europe could reverse Brexit, they would do so in a heartbeat. I think at the moment, the big focus in relations with the UK is to do with defence, because this sudden stone-cold realisation that the US may walk away, it means that the big defence players in Europe will have more power, and that, of course, includes the UK. I mean, United Kingdom is a nuclear power, so is France. They suddenly hold so much influence.
Adam, thank you. A reminder that if you want to know about the second-placed party in the German elections, the far-right AfD, you can just scroll back. There was an episode of The Daily on them last week. Do also make sure to give our podcast a follow. That should be just a click of a button away. That is your lot for this edition of The Daily, however. We're back again tomorrow.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.